The words hung in the air like smoke after a fire, impossible to take back, impossible to ignore. My sister's face had gone pale, my mother's eyes wide with horror, and somewhere behind us, I heard the soft shuffle of 11-year-old feet on hardwood. "What did Uncle mean, Mom?" The question came from the doorway, delivered in that innocent, curious tone that children use when they sense the adults are hiding something important. My niece stood there in her pajamas, dark hair tousled from sleep, clutching the stuffed elephant I'd given her for her 8th birthday. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. The secret we'd all agreed to keep, the one that had been eating at me for years, had just spilled out in a moment of raw anger. And now, as I watched my sister's face crumble, I realized there was no going back. Let me start from the beginning. 14 years ago, when I was 17 and thought I knew everything about the world, my sister Sarah dropped a bomb that changed all our lives. She was 20, halfway through community college, and pregnant. The father, some guy she'd been seeing for a few months, vanished the moment she told him. Just packed up his dorm room and transferred schools, leaving her to face our deeply religious parents alone. "I can't do this," she'd whispered to me one night, her hands shaking as she pressed them against her still flat stomach. "I'm not ready to be a mother." But abortion wasn't an option in our family, and adoption felt too complicated, too final. So when little Emma was born, tiny, perfect, and utterly helpless, Sarah made a decision that would define the next 3 years of our lives. "I need you to help me," she said, placing the baby in my arms while our mother looked on with tired, understanding eyes. "Just until I figure things out." What was supposed to be temporary became permanent. Sarah moved 2 states away for work, sending money when she could, visiting on holidays and birthdays. Meanwhile, I dropped out of high school to become a full-time caregiver to my infant niece. Those early days blur together now. Endless nights of feeding and diaper changes, teaching Emma her first words, watching her take her first wobbling steps across our living room floor. My mother worked double shifts to support us all, so most days it was just me and Emma, learning to navigate parenthood together. I remember the way Emma would reach for me when she woke up crying at 3 in the morning. How she'd babble da-da while I fed her breakfast, not knowing the word didn't quite fit. The pride I felt when she took her first steps, not toward a toy or the couch, but straight into my arms. I loved that little girl with a fierceness that surprised me. When she scraped her knee, she ran to me. When thunderstorms scared her, she crawled into my bed. I was the one who taught her to tie her shoes, who helped her with her first attempts at writing her name. For 3 years, I was her world, and she was mine. Then Sarah met David. He was everything she'd been looking for: stable, kind, ready to settle down. Suddenly, my sister was clean, focused, and desperate to reclaim the life she'd put on hold. She moved back home without warning, thanked me for babysitting, and seamlessly stepped into the role of mother. Emma, now 3, adapted with the resilience that only children possess. Sarah became mommy, David became daddy, and I became uncle, the guy who lived at Grandma's house and gave good hugs when they visited. The family agreed it was better this way, cleaner, less confusing for Emma. We never talked about those first 3 years, never acknowledged what had really happened. As far as Emma knew, she'd always lived with her parents, always been part of their perfect little family. But secrets have weight. They settle in your chest, growing heavier with each passing year. And sometimes when you're angry and hurt and tired of being treated like you don't matter, they burst out with devastating force. Last week I lost my job. Budget cuts, they said. Last hired, first fired. I'd been struggling to find work, sending out resumes and getting rejection after rejection. The stress was eating at me and Sarah knew it. We were at Mom's house for what was supposed to be a family dinner, but the tension had been building all evening. Sarah had been making little digs about my employment situation, subtle comments about responsibility and reliability. Finally, she crossed a line. Maybe if you'd learned to handle responsibility better, you wouldn't be in this situation, she said, her voice dripping with casual cruelty that only family can deliver. Something inside me snapped. Don't talk to me about responsibility. I shot back, my voice louder than I intended. You're lucky your daughter was too young to remember how you abandoned her. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's face went white. Mom's fork clattered against her plate, and that's when we heard it. The soft gasp from the doorway, the shuffle of small feet. What did Uncle mean, Mom? Emma's voice cut through the tension like a blade. She was standing there in her pajamas, looking between us with those wide, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. In that moment, I realized the secret we'd worked so hard to keep had just been shattered by my anger. Nothing, sweetheart, Sarah said quickly, her voice artificially bright. Uncle was just being silly. Why don't you go back to bed? But Emma wasn't buying it. She looked at me with the same direct gaze she'd had as a toddler, the one that meant she wouldn't be satisfied with half-truths or deflection. Uncle, she said softly, what did you mean about Mom abandoning me? The room held its breath. I could feel my mother's disapproving stare, could see Sarah's pleading expression, could hear the weight of years of silence pressing down on all of us. But Emma deserved the truth, even if it was painful. Your mom was very young when you were born, I said carefully, kneeling down to her level. She needed help taking care of you, so you lived with me and Grandma for a while. That's all. How long is a while? Emma asked, her voice small but determined. 3 years, I said quietly. Until you were 3. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Emma's eyes filled with confusion, then understanding, then something that looked like hurt. She looked at her mother, then at me, then back at her mother again. Why didn't anyone tell me? She whispered. Sarah knelt beside her daughter, tears streaming down her face. Because I was ashamed, she said, her voice breaking. I was scared and young, and I made a mistake. I thought it would be better if you didn't know. But I lived with Uncle, Emma asked, looking at me with new eyes. He took care of me. He did, Mom said softly, speaking for the first time since the revelation. Her voice carried years of gratitude and regret. He loved you very much. We all did. Emma processed this information with the seriousness of a child trying to understand an adult world that suddenly made less sense than it had an hour ago. She looked at me for a long moment, then walked over and wrapped her arms around my waist. Thank you for taking care of me, she said simply. In that moment, I felt the weight of 14 years of secrets lift from my shoulders. Not because the truth had been revealed, but because Emma, this remarkable little girl who had been the center of my world, understood that love comes in many forms. And that sometimes the most important love is the kind that asks for nothing in return. The conversation that followed was difficult. There were tears, explanations, and a lot of hard questions about why adults sometimes make choices that hurt the people they love. But there was also honesty finally, and a chance for Emma to understand her story completely. Sarah and I are still working through our anger. Mom thinks I was wrong to break the agreement, and maybe she's right. But I can't bring myself to regret it. Secrets are meant to protect people, but sometimes they end up hurting them more than the truth ever could. Emma deserved to know that she was loved, fiercely and completely from the very beginning. She deserved to know that her story is more complex than the simple narrative we'd constructed for her. And maybe, just maybe, she deserved to know that sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who ask for nothing in return. The weight of secrets is gone now, replaced by something lighter but no less important. The weight of truth and the hope that it will serve us better than silence ever did. That's all for today's story. Hope you enjoyed the ride. If you did, give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to help me reach my first 1,000 subscribers. It really means a lot. And hey, if you're still craving more drama, mystery, or chaos, check out the next story right here on the screen. See you in the next one.